It's 104.9 Coyote Country. Robert Miguel here with you, celebrating National School Choice Week all this week. And so we're just kind of, touching on some various subjects, talking to some private schools around here. And this is kind of interesting. With me on the phone, the Director of Public Policy at the, Texas Homeschool Coalition Association. Is that right?
That's correct.
Mr. Jeremy Newman. Good morning, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this with us. Again, like I said, it is National School Choice Week, and we here at the radio station, we have a great relationship with our public school system. The Uvalde CISD comes in weekly. They do a great job here. But, we thought it wise, given, this is School Choice Week, just to kind of talk about other options, maybe address common misconceptions, just get the community some information about school choice, private schools, that kind of thing. So what is it exactly that you guys do over at the Texas Homeschool Coalition?
Yeah, sure. So THSC has been around for about 30 years, and generally speaking, we're an advocacy organization and a support organization. So a lot of people wouldn't assume this necessarily, but we actually get involved in, for a policy perspective, in any issue that relates to the ability of families to raise their children, because we kind of see that as the basis of the right to homeschool. But on the homeschooling issue in particular, we hold 2 conventions per year that each draw 4,000 to 5,000 people, and that's kind of you could think of it almost like a book fair in some ways, in that there are a lot of exhibitors that come in where people can come and purchase materials, review materials and programs, but then lots of speakers and workshops that people can come participate in as well. We offer membership to people so that we can help them get started homeschooling, or help them anytime they have difficulties with state agencies or something like that who don't understand the rules on how homeschooling works, which is surprisingly frequent. So that's kind of a general overview of the work that we do.
Tell me this, like I said earlier, what are some common misconceptions about homeschooling in particular, or what are the most popular questions you guys get regarding, the whole thing?
Yeah, so a couple of those things. One of the most popular questions is, why do people do it? And, historically, the most common reason has been kind of a moral instruction perspective that people have, that you don't really get that in the public school. And from a cultural perspective, you kind of get the opposite of that in the public school sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that a lot of families really value. And one of the things that has become, this category of people is growing, is people who do it specifically, or at least primarily, for academic reasons, where they feel like they can provide their children a better quality education. And then one of the misconceptions that we get sometimes is the idea that people who are homeschooled lack outlets for socialization, which is interesting because statistically homeschoolers actually perform better in the standard metrics for socialization than other forms of education. So they do better at college. They go to college and graduate on at a better rate, and they're more involved in their community, more likely to understand and be involved in politics. So those types of things are things that homeschoolers are far above the curve on.
Now, as far as Texas goes, what are the qualifications? What's kind of the base thing you've got? Okay, for instance, I'm a parent. I'm a pretty bright guy. I've gone to some college, but the biggest problem I have with perhaps getting my kid in homeschooling is actually lack of faith within myself as an instructor or as a leader to make sure it happens correctly. How exactly is a curriculum executed? What's in place to make sure that not only are the kids getting a good curriculum, but as far as homeschooling goes, the person that's in charge of making sure it happens is actually qualified to do the instruction?
Sure. So here's one thing to note first, is that the different states have a lot of different requirements and different levels of regulation, and there is literally no correlation between the amount of regulation between the different states and the quality of the outcome in the students. So states with super high regulation do not have better academic outcomes than states with low regulation, which is what Texas is. So in Texas, the requirements actually come from a Texas Supreme Court decision back in 1994 called Leeper versus Arlington. And the decision basically said that homeschools in Texas are exempt from compulsory attendance as a type of private school, and that they have to meet the basic academic qualifications of teaching reading, writing, spelling, grammar, mathematics, and a study of good citizenship. And if they do that, then they're a private school exempt from compulsory attendance. Now, enforcement of that isn't really strict at all. So, the TEA even says on its website that they do not regulate homeschools in Texas. And Those are kind of the rules that apply. So let me address one of the things that you kind of alluded to there, which is how do you know if a parent is qualified? And this is one of the other really interesting things about the homeschooling movement, which is that there is also no correlation, or at least no statistically significant one, for the outcomes of students as compared to the educational level of the parent. So whether a parent has a PhD or a bachelor's degree or even a GED does not significantly affect the academic outcome for the student. And one of the reasons for that is because the variety and the diversity of curriculum and options is so abundant that the parent doesn't have to be the expert in every field. And it's also a very community-based type of education where families work together and they form co-ops. And so a parent who doesn't, they're not great at algebra, while the family who lives a few doors down from them who homeschools might be great at algebra. And so they kind of work together to teach that.
Now, tell me this. Is there a particular type of child, a particular type of student that might benefit from homeschooling? Maybe you've got a kid at home. They're not performing super well in public school. Are there certain ones that you feel maybe have a better chance homeschooling, or, that might gravitate towards homeschooling that might benefit from, that other, in my opinion, I think a kid, my 2 cents, and this is just me, I kind of feel like, a smart kid's going to flourish either way. But is there a certain type that you feel maybe would benefit the most from homeschooling?
Sure, yeah. So, let me give a plug first to say that, in my opinion, at least, it's something that any student can benefit from, because statistically speaking, homeschool students on average will score 25 to 35 points above their public school peers on standardized tests. And that's not, so the way that works out is that means that they score above that percentage of other students. So if they score in the 85th percentile, which is roughly average, then they're scoring above 85% of the other students. Mm-hmm. And that's how homeschoolers traditionally perform. And so I think that the type of student who would be good for this, I think it really can't be anybody, but special needs students is a population that's growing dramatically in the homeschooling movement. And that's because the type of education that you need for a special needs student is so tailored that it's really hard to get the type of individual attention and instruction you need at the public school. And that's not to say that public schools don't have some of those resources. Homeschool families even use some of those resources. But there's just a different level and degree of attention that you need for some students. And for students who are not special needs, you can run into the exact same type of problem, just because one of the unavoidable pitfalls of standard form of education is it's difficult for one teacher to give attention to every student.
Sure, right, yeah.
And that's something that you can do in the homeschooling environment, that you can really give individual and tailored attention to a particular student. So I think that's the reason that it works well for virtually any student, but for students who, for different reasons, have a particular need for that, they really can excel in homeschooling as compared to other forms of education.
Now let's get into the tricky part of the subject here, because as you kind of alluded to earlier, I think one of the benefits of homeschooling is the whole kind of big brother, freedom, that kind of thing, where it's like, parents have the choice to do what they darn well please in the education of their kids, and it's not state regulated, not, federally regulated, et cetera, et cetera. So, what are, I guess in your opinion or in your experience, the pitfalls that parents and students have to deal with when dealing with public school that they don't have to deal with when they're dealing with, homeschooling?
Well, there are a couple things. One of the things that happens in the public school system is that, every time the reins of power, so to speak, change at the state level, the standards tend to change at the local level. And so, schools have this problem where they have to deal with the rules that are given out by the state that change every time someone with a new opinion comes into office. And they're kind of strangled a little bit with the number of rules that they have to comply with. And so, I mentioned before that homeschool students perform better, and I'm not of the opinion that that's because public school teachers are bad or something like that. I think that it's because you have some great students and some great teachers that you're putting into a system that strangles innovation. And so it's very difficult for them to perform under that type of environment. And so I think that that's one of the pitfalls that you deal with in public education is that the state is so heavily involved at the local level, it's difficult for them to innovate. And I think one of the other things is that, people don't really think about this a lot, but public education kind of teaches the student how to socialize with people their own age, but only with people their own age. And so it's an interesting developmental thing that you don't really learn how to interact with people who are older or younger than you until you've already graduated high school. I mean, in large part. And so that's one of the things that's different in the homeschooling environment, which is that families are friends with families, generally speaking. And so you interact with people who are older and who are younger, and you have to learn how to communicate with people who are older and who are younger, with adults, with children. And so the diversity is a little bit greater. And obviously, one of the fourth most common concern, at least in Texas, for why families choose to homeschool is safety, because you have things in the public school like bullying and drugs and stuff like that goes on that families want to escape. And that's something that's really difficult for schools to police. And they do to some degree, but they can't eliminate it. And so some families have to escape that, and homeschooling is the way to do it.
Well, man, sir, I really appreciate your time talking to us today. Again, we've been talking to Jeremy Newman, Director of Public Policy at the Texas Homeschool Coalition. Where can parents, potential students get more information about how they can help out with you guys, or get more information about homeschooling in general?
Yeah, you can go to our website, which is thsc.org. You can also find us on Facebook by the same name, Texas Homeschool Coalition. And people can contact our customer service line if they're interested in starting homeschooling. And there's also a lot of information about that they can find on our website.
Now, you guys are based out of Dallas here. Are the Dallas office?
I'm actually based out of Dallas.
Okay.
Normally, I'm in Austin right now because the legislative session is happening, but THSC is based out of Lubbock.
Okay. And do you guys know of anything, in the Southwest Texas area? Is there any resources out here specifically that people can look into, or is that information linked up on your website?
Yeah, that is linked up on our website. So one of our conventions that we hold is in the Woodlands, so we actually get people from that region who come to that. And then we have lists of all of the local homeschool support groups around the state, so people can find stuff in their area.
Well, again, thank you so much. Again, Jeremy Newman with the Texas Homeschool Association. The website, again, is thsc.org. And thank you, sir, for shedding some light on homeschooling. We appreciate you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on.
Real Country with Robert Miguel.
Coyote Country.
104.9.